Who do you think this man is? Have you ever seen him before? Do you know his story? Probably not, since outside of the world of art history, he's never really mentioned, even if he did design some of the most amazing structures of Victorian England. Even if he did help kickstart the general design of what modern British houses look like, he is still just sort of a footnote in history. This is the man who designed and built several fancy private residences, 40 churches, 6 grand cathedrals, as well as designing many decorative projects in the span of just 16 years. Hello and welcome to the channel Superflare 5000. I am your host Galileo, and today I am going to be talking about architect, designer, author and Gothic revivalist A.W.N. Pugin. Augustus Welby Northmore Pugin was born in 1812, and his name wasn't the only thing that was fantastic, so was the work he did throughout his life. From a young age, he drew. As I understand it, he drew just about everything that he saw. Starting as a child and into adulthood, this man did thousands of drawings and designs. There are pages and pages of his artwork spanning his entire life. He was immensely talented, and in some of these drawings it has been noted that he especially liked sketching to understand the practicalities of things that he was looking at, trying to understand exactly how they worked. This was clearly picked up on by his father, French-born artist and architectural draftsman Augustus Charles Pugin, who trained his son in design and draftsmanship in his teen years, taking him around Europe to see the wide range of architectural marvels the continent had to offer. Throughout his life, Pugin drew inspiration from these places he saw across Europe during his travels. At the start of his professional life in 1836, Pugin published a book called Contrasts, or a parallel between the noble edifices of the Middle Ages and corresponding buildings of the present day, showing the present decay of taste, accompanied by appropriate text. Just from the title, you can tell that he had certain opinions on the then-modern architecture. He believed that the so-called caliber, or the visual significance of grand public architecture, directly showcased the quality, character, and sort of the reputation of a civilized society. I hate that word. Pugin also believed that the rise of classical, simple, and symmetrical architecture and the decline of the arts, so to speak, was caused by the Reformation. To understand why Pugin thought this, why his designs are the way they are, and why he did so many Catholic buildings throughout his career, we need to understand that he was quite a devout English Roman Catholic. He converted in 1834, and at the time, in Victorian Britain, Catholicism wasn't exactly fully accepted. And to understand this and why Pugin's designs were such a big deal, religiously speaking, in the Victorian era, we need to briefly talk about the Reformation. I'm sure we all learned about this sometime in school, so I won't get too deep into the details, but basically, and I'm simplifying the shit out of this, in 1517, a few monks in Germany, namely John Calvin and Martin Luther, not that one, were sick of the Catholic Church's corruption involving how they stuck their fingers in politics and peasants' pockets. Most notably, the fact that they somehow convinced regular peasant people that their sins could be forgiven and they would secure a place in heaven by paying the church certain amounts of money, more cash paid for more serious sins, as these sort of spiritual payments. These monk guys really didn't agree with the unethical practices and the fact that people were being cheated of while seeking comfort for the church. They printed and published the 95 Thesis, otherwise known as the Disputation on the Power and Efficacy of Indulgences. Big belief was that Luther hammered this document into the Wittenberg church door, but that's apparently just a myth, and it's more likely that they mailed it directly to the bishop or something. But anyway, this all sparked big debates across Europe and basically birthed Lutheranism, obviously, and Protestantism, two other branches of Christianity. Then, in 1534, King Henry VIII, we all know about him, big bastard bitch man, and the 6 wives he treated horribly, dissolved all the monasteries because he didn't like that the Catholic Church wouldn't grant him a divorce from his first wife because she couldn't give him a male heir or whatever, and instead opened up his own church, the Church of England, that's the Anglican Church, with himself as the supreme head. And then the Catholics were persecuted through the ages from then because the royals are nasty. and the Protestants got the same treatment from the Catholics in turn, because it all swung on a pendulum depending on who was on the throne. But anyway, this all ties back to our boy Pugin, whose first major job was designing and architecting the first Catholic cathedral to be built in England in 300 years, St Chad's Cathedral in Birmingham. This helped spark sort of the resurgence of Catholicism in Victorian England. There were more factors, of course, but it showed that people didn't have to be casual about their religion. This grand cathedral really exhibited both Pugin's dedication to God and his faith, as well as his immense talents. This building is amazing, and the best part is, Pugin didn't just design the exterior, but the interior too. Look at the magnificence of this place. And what's even better than that is Pugin designed everything in it. I'm not talking about the look and structure of the pillars or the stonework of the walls. I mean, he designed everything, from the floor tile pattern to the stained glass windows and even the bloody candlesticks. Pugin did just hundreds of works over his lifetime, but one of the massive projects Pugin is noted for was being hired to partner with the famous architect Charles Barry to redesign the Palace of Westminster. It's believed that the site in which the palace is was originally used by King Canute in around 1016 to 1035 during his reign. The first version of the palace in the original Westminster Abbey was built by King Edward the Confessor in around 1045, but the oldest surviving part of this palace is Westminster Hall, which dates to around 1087 to 1100, from the reign of King William II. But in 1834, the entire place almost burnt to the ground in a rather careless accidental fire, depicted here by one of my favourite artists, A.W. Turner. A sort of competition was held to see which famous architect would be designing and rebuilding the whole place. Barry was chosen as the leading architect, but since his design style was more on the classical side than Gothic, he hired his buddy Pugin to come and help him. The English Gothic revival movement was in full swing, and the toffs loved the aesthetic, the telltale stylistic spikes and spires, and the dynamic shapes and colours of interiors. It harked back to the medieval origins of the Gothic aesthetic. The Gothic style was somewhat of a cultural movement. I mean, he was American, but Edgar Allan Poe was out there writing stories like The Fall of the House of Usher and The Raven poem around the 1830s. Barry and Pugin dedicated years of their lives to designing and rebuilding the marvel that is the Palace of Westminster today. Again, Pugin designed not only the exterior, but also the tiles, the stained glass windows, the chairs, the tables, the wallpaper, the ceilings, the candlesticks, even the doorknobs. Literally everything. Barry relied quite heavily on Pugin for this project, and yet Pugin wasn't the one known for Westminster. Look at the House of Lords. This massive golden sculpted structure that sits as the sort of spotlight to the whole room was designed, I can almost guarantee, entirely by Pugin. Every engraving, every colour choice, every tiny detail. Pugin worked with the artisans and the builders to achieve this amazing feat. The throne was also of his design. Pugin probably made thousands of designs for Westminster over the course of however long it took to rebuild, but when he was hired by Barry, when he started designing the place, Pugin was 23. Pugin was not known for half-arsing things. If he was going to design something, he was going to design everything in it. Much like my own father, he designed and built his own house. Of course, my parents' house is nowhere near as grand as Pugin's, because the Grange in Ramsgate is a thing to behold. Pugin's home was restored to its original designs, from the tiles to the wallpaper, by the Landmark Trust. It's just a massive house, fit for a family as big as Pugin's. In his library or his study, the names of close friends and his most loyal patrons are painted around the skirting in the ceiling. Just look at it. This massive house that was home to Pugin, his third wife, and Pugin's 8 children, was almost an oddity by Victorian standards. In the Georgian era, buildings looked like this, symmetrical, big old rectangle squares, sort of modest and easy to build. Lots of windows, which they bricked up because window tax was a thing. According to the Time Team special on Pugin, the video that inspired this video, and actually my channel, said that the way Pugin designed things was from the inside out. Before, people built their houses with the outside in mind before fitting the rooms in the space available. Pugin, however, and his house is a good example, built the rooms and then thought about the exterior. He structured his home logically, the rooms not confined to a square but sort of creating their own. Long corridors connected the rooms, windows didn't face the same direction. It was new, innovative, almost ugly by previous design standards. But the designers and architect that followed Pugin in the following years drew massive inspiration from his work, and consequently started designing regular houses like his, just on a smaller, less grand scale, because Pugin had his own chapel in his house, as well as a massive tower and stained glass windows. There's even a church he designed himself next to it, St. Augustine's. So British houses now, from the outside at least, were all sort of inspired by Pugin's designs. Pugin is a man who isn't really remembered, but his impact can be seen in the very residences people live in. Pugin worked with speed, and this was sought after since he could work on several big projects at a time. This created immense pressure on him. Pugin was a workaholic, but he worked so hard he had a major mental breakdown from the strain and stress he and his clients put on him. His last project was designing the medieval exhibition for the Great Exhibition of 1851, because of course the greatest Gothic Revivalist designer had to be called upon for that. Of course, there are no pictures of this, and many of Pugin's works have actually been demolished over the years. Not everything he ever made has been left intact, but the records of his works are extensive. In the February of 1852, the burnout and stress caught up with him. He went into a downward spiral of exhaustion and mental strain to the point he apparently couldn't even talk. He was admitted to asylums, as well as the famed Royal Bethlehem Hospital, otherwise known as Bedlam, and was removed by his wife and brought home to the Grange for what they hoped would be a recovery. Rosemary Hill, a biographer who wrote a book about Pugin's life, suggested that as well as a clear work-related stress and exhaustion, Pugin suffered from hyperthyroidism. He apparently had suffered from many symptoms of illness throughout his life. Hill also suggested that Pugin suffered with syphilis symptoms that he might have caught in his late teens or early 20s. Whatever the case, if it was caused by one thing or more, Pugin died in his home in September 1852 and was buried in St. Augustine's, the church next to his home in Ramsgate. He was only 40 years old. The years of his short life produced thousands of designs, countless architectural feats, enormous displays of artistic talent, and a legacy that most people don't even know about. He is honoured with a room dedicated to him in the Palace of Westminster, the Pugin Room, a room in which he, no doubt, designed himself. Pugin should be remembered as an important character in the story of British art history, as he was a major contributor in English architectural evolution, and his work can be seen in the very buildings we live in. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you learned something new today. I have listed all my sources in the description for you if you wish to read more about the topics I covered. And yes, I have cited Wikipedia. I like it for background information. It's a good source, okay? Anyway, I hope you all have wonderful days and nights, and I hope to see you all in the next video.